Shalom, everybody. Welcome back after a long break, Pesach break, Baruch Hashem. We have insights now on the Parsha of the week, Parshat Shemini, first Shabbat after Pesach, B'ezrat Hashem, with Rosh Chodesh following next week. We have a very deep insight, and I'll do my best to make it as clear as possible with a few fine details. And B'ezrat Hashem, it should work out, and the amazing advice and light and insight that comes out should be very practical. We'll start off with first what Rebbe Nachman brings down in the Likutey Moharan, and also Rebbe Nachman in the Likutey Moharan. Just, we need to recap about the story. In Parshat Bereshit, the beginning of the Torah, so we're taught that Hashem created the sun and the moon to be equal. Et ha-me'orot ha-gdolim, the verse reads. That Hashem created the lights, the big lights. Big lights meaning they were the same size initially. The sun and the moon were created the same light, the same size. And then the verse reads later on, Et ha-ma'or ha-gadol le-memshelet bayom, ve'et ha-ma'or ha-katan le-memshelet limshol balayla. Hashem then says, and the Torah says, and Hashem then made the big one singular light, the big one, to rule during the day, that's the sun, and the smaller light, which is the moon, to rule at night. So what's going on here? It said at first the big lights, and then it said one is big and one is small. So Rashi brings down from the sages that the moon complained to Hashem. It's what's called kitrug halevana, kitrug hayareach, the prosecution, if you want to say, of the moon. That the moon said to Hashem, Ivshar, it's impossible that two kings should use and rule with one crown. We're both big, we're both shining the same light. So then Rashi brings down again from the sages that Hashem told the moon, okay, you're right. Lechi u'me'ati tatzmech. So go and diminish yourself. So the Gemara, it's the Midrash that goes on. It says that the moon complained to Hashem, I said something which was correct, because the proof is you told me, okay, diminish yourself, and I get punished. Why should I diminish myself? So Hashem said, you're right, I'll give you to appease you stars, and the moon was not appeased. The Jewish people will count all the holidays and all the festivals based on the moon, the monthly cycle. The moon wasn't sufficed. Tzaddikim will be called on your name, Shmuel HaKatan, all these tzaddikim are called the small, to show humility. The moon wasn't convinced. So then Hashem said, okay, Haviu alai korban al shemi'atete tayareach. Hashem said, so the Jews will bring in the future a sacrifice to atone for my, Hashem, quote unquote, sin of diminishing the moon. Amazing, huh? This is what we read on every Rosh Chodesh, this coming Rosh Chodesh, when you read the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh. So the last verse of the Parsha for Rosh Chodesh is Useir Izim Chatat Lashem. And one of the sacrifices, the Musaf offering of Rosh Chodesh, includes Seir Izim, a goat offering, Chatat Lashem, a sin offering for Hashem, Lashem. So Rashi brings, first of all, the halachic technical reasoning that only sins which only Hashem knows about, this atones for, okay? And Rashi in this week's Parsha, also Parshat Shemini, brings down that it comes to atone for Tumat HaKodashim, V'Avekelav, the impurity that comes to the Beit HaMikdash and the vessels. But the Midrash that Rashi brings down on this verse, Chatat Lashem, is that what the Gemara says, this Midrash, Haviu alai kapara al shemi'ateti tayareach, that we say this is a sin offering Lashem, for Hashem, as if to say this is a sin offering for Hashem, that because Hashem diminished the moon, okay? So, a few things. First of all, Rebbe Nachman is beautiful on this concept. He says, and this is again based on Likutey Moharan, lesson 24. Rebbe Nachman goes into this beautiful concept in his discourse, Nefilat Apayim, halacha number 4, in Likutey Halachot, where he says that the secret for receiving the light, the idea of light is ultimately shining what's called the infinite light, where from that light comes all light and also understanding light, clarity in life. But it comes in a format which is called reaching and not reaching, which is also called the running of the mind forward and then being prevented, going backwards. To explain, he teaches Rebbe Nachman that if a person just had an attitude and an element of his faculty of the brain just to advance and advance and advance without breaks, without going backwards, in order to properly filter and absorb the light in proper vessels, a person would just disintegrate. He would just be nullified with the existence of Hashem and not be a separate existence as a human being, as part of the creation. And for that not to happen, the way any perception of light, of holy light, comes to the world is it's in and out, forward and backwards. This is fundamental for growth. This is the secret for any spiritual growth in life, any growth. That all growth has a part of it, setbacks. You have to have a setback, a pushback, a delay, in order to internalize and settle the mind, in order to properly receive that light. If the person is just running forward, so he can't properly absorb that light. So, based on that, Rav Nosson explains this is the whole idea of the sun being big, the sun being the big light, which is the idea of perception. A person, his mind is running forward, he can perceive and understand and grow. And the moon being diminished. The moon being diminished, meaning it's a setback. Hashem told the moon, diminish yourself, go back, no longer forward towards the light. You're not big light anymore, shining that light of the infinite light. You're now diminished, which is a plus, right? So the question is, if it makes sense, so why did Hashem initially create the two lights equal? And then why did Hashem tell the moon to diminish? Which, okay, that makes sense. But then Hashem said, okay, they'll bring a sin offering for me for doing this. What in the world is going on? If that's the way things are supposed to be, so then why the problem here? Why that there has to be a sin offering every Rosh Chodesh to commemorate that Hashem diminished the moon? Because again, Rosh Chodesh is the time that we sanctify the moon. The beginning of the lunar cycle starts. So that's the fitting time that we read the Parsha of it, and the time of the temple, the Musaf offering for Rosh Chodesh, which is for the moon basically, the symbolism, the relevance of that day of Rosh Chodesh. So this sacrifice of a sin offering for Hashem is offered on that day. So what's going on? The answer is, it's illogical. You can't figure it out. That's the whole thing. If it was logical, then there's no diminishment. There is an advancement, the light of the sun of clarity, yes, but now the questions we have on Hashem, if it was the right thing to do, why is it a sin offering? And if it was the right thing to do, that the moon was diminished, so why create them initially big? These questions we have are part of the picture, that there are things that are unanswered. I can't figure it out. Because that's the idea of diminished perception. That itself is the package and parcel of this concept. Okay? So, Rebbe Nachman adds another point in Likutey Moharan, part 2, lesson number 1. And this is unbelievable. He says that it's a big gift, Rosh Chodesh. Especially that Rosh Chodesh also falls on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Tishrei, is number 1, the new year, the first day of the new year. But it's also Rosh Chodesh. So Rebbe Nachman says there's something phenomenal. He says there that on the day of judgment, Rosh Hashanah, we all don't stand a chance. Technically, in the face of Hashem's judgment, where every detail is measured, every detail is taken into consideration, so we don't stand a chance. We know how we are, especially today, where we're really, really upside down. Our like Rebbe Nachman says elsewhere in the Likutey Moharan, our faces are darker than even the bottom of the pots. It's an expression in Hebrew. So we don't stand a chance in front of Hashem's judgment. What's our opening? Our opening, he says, is Rosh Chodesh. Why? Rosh Chodesh is we sin offering for Hashem. Why? For diminishing the moon. Okay, what does that have to do with me? So Rebbe Nachman teaches, quoting the Zohar and the Kabbalah, that because the moon is waning and waxing, and the light is sometimes complete, like on the 15th of the month, where it's a full moon, and then it diminishes, it's waning, and also in the beginning of the month, it's small and growing. 15th of the month, it's full moon, and then it grows smaller. And the Jewish people are connected a lot to the Levana, the moon, because it's shining light, which is clarity. So when it's diminished, we as the Jewish people, who our whole goal in this world is to shine and illuminate Hashem's infinite light into the world. With this diminishment of the light of the moon, it also has a rippled effect upon us, that we are not capable of having full perception of godliness. The da'at, the awareness, the perception is very limited, constricted, darkened, concealed, which leads us to sin, which leads us to fall. So Rebbe Nachman says something which is like, if he didn't say it, we couldn't have the audacity to say it. That we're saying, Rav Nosson writes it clearly in the prayer in his 50th gate, Likutey Tefillot, prayer number 1 of part 2 Likutey Moharan, that Hashem, our opening on Rosh Hashanah, that is also Rosh Chodesh. On Rosh Chodesh, we offer a sin offering for you because you diminished the moon, and from the diminishment of the moon comes all of my sins. So 1 + 1 is 2. It's as if Hashem, we're saying, what do you want that I sin and I'm facing judgment on the day of judgment? You're the one responsible for my sinning. You diminished the moon. And from there comes the darkness of perception, which allows for sadness, for doubts, for slackening, for misconception, for falling in life. Okay? All that is emanating from the diminishment of the moon. So it's a big thing. It's a big thing, the diminishment of the moon. And we offer a sin offering for Hashem. It's considered a sin on one hand because it's diminishment. But on the other hand, like he says, it's part of the picture. The only way to perceive God is you go forward and you go back. Going back, unfortunately, can also include that a person stumbles in his Judaism, in his performance. What am I at fault? This is how Hashem did it. So this is our opening, Rebbe Nachman says, on Rosh Hashanah. But to go back to what he said initially, this is the idea of how things are supposed to be, in and out. Rav Nosson connects this, that the moon was a kitschuk complaint, we can't rule of this light, we have to have diminishment. He connects it to the blemish of Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, were big tzaddikim, very big, in that they were just tzaddikim. There was no blemish in them. Like Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron, and Rashi brings this down, also explains it, that Hashem said, Bikrovai akadesh. Hashem said to Moshe, I will be sanctified with those who are close to me. So Rashi brings down that Moshe said to Aaron, I thought it was either me or you. Our death will be the way to bring the sanctification of the temple, the tabernacle into the world. Now I see it was them, your two sons, and they were much higher and holier than us. The truth is, yes, the difference between Nadav, Avihu, as opposed to Moshe and Aaron, Nadav and Avihu were just light, like the sun, just going up and up with no restraints. That's why they were burnt. They were burnt from the Ktoret that they offered, that the 2 pillars of fire went into their nostrils, burning the neshama. Their bodies were intact. Their bodies were untouched. It was just the neshamas which were burned. And why they had to leave? Because they were into the attitude of just running forward, the redifa, the advancement. But the me'akev, the restraint they didn't have. Like Rashi says, a few things, they weren't married, they did certain things to show that they didn't have restraint. They also ruled halach in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. Who jumps like that? Someone who doesn't have the power of restraint. So Nadav and Avihu were tzaddikim, but only going forward, which is only half of the picture, the sun. What about the moon? You need the moon. They didn't have the aspect of the me'akev, the diminishment, being stepped back. That's why they were burnt, okay? With this whole introduction, let's now take a look at the Parsha. In the Parsha, we're talking about the 5th Aliyah. So we're chapter 10 in Vayikra, Parshat Shemini, chapter 10, verse 15, 16, okay? In the verses beforehand, because Nadav and Avihu had just passed away, it was let's go into history now. The Parsha is talking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the inauguration of the tabernacle, okay? It was a very big day. The tabernacle was erected finally, and there was blessings given, and then finally Aaron and his sons are inaugurated and finally doing the service. The 7 days beforehand, including that day itself, Moshe Rabbeinu did the work of the Kohanim, and every day he built, erected, and dismantled the tabernacle. On the 8th day, he erected it and did not dismantle it, and inaugurated were Aaron and his sons. It took 8 days of inauguration, and finally they got to work on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the terrible incident happened in the middle of the celebrations and the experience that finally the divine Shechina, divine fire, came down from above and accepted the sacrifices. It was a whole story, and all the Jewish people saw that. There was such excitement. In all of this, Nadav and Avihu, from their perception, they went to offer without permission, without being authorized, in the Holy of Holies, which only Aaron can go into on Yom Kippur. And it wasn't Yom Kippur, it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. They went in offering Ktoret, and that's why they were burnt. So there was a bit of mourning on that day, and yet there were many sacrifices to offer. There were 3 musafim, additional sacrifices to offer on that day. Number 1, the offering of Rosh Chodesh, because it was Rosh Chodesh, it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Number 2, the shlamim, which is part of the inauguration sacrifices. And number 3, the first of the 12 tribes who offered a musaf offering, which is Nachshon from the tribe of Judah. So the 3 musafim offerings, of the 3, 2 were only for that day in history. They wouldn't be again after that. The inauguration of the Miluim was only that day and that's it. No other day afterwards. Nachshon's sacrifice, only that day. But the Rosh Chodesh offering is a Rosh Chodesh offering for every one of the 12 months. That will be again and again and again. So Moshe Rabbeinu told the sons of Aaron, you should eat from the korbanot just because you're in mourning. You're onen. Onen is the stage before the burial. And they were at that stage when Nadav and Avihu they passed away because they didn't bury them immediately. They pushed them on the side to finish the celebrations because it's the inauguration of the temple of all the sacrifices that had to be done. So they were being offered, but they refused to eat from it because they knew the halacha that you're allowed to, as a Kohen and the Kohanim, especially Aaron, the sacrifices related to Aaron, he has to do the work even though he's mourning. But eating, it wasn't clear. They all stayed away. So Moshe Rabbeinu told them, because this is a once in history chance, you guys, even though you're mourners and you're onanim, you have to eat from the korban of Nachshon, the Musaf korban of Nachshon, and the korban of the inauguration. And then we come to the Rosh Chodesh offering. So it begins like this, verse 16. Ve'et se'ir hachatat, and the goat offering, this goat sin offering of the Musaf for Rosh Chodesh, Darash, funny wording. Darosh inquired. Did he inquire? Moshe inquired, did he inquire? What is a double inquirement? They didn't eat from it, and instead they burnt it. So Darosh, Rashi says, the first Darosh, he inquired, why was it burnt? And the only reason that it can validly be burnt is if the blood of the sacrifice was spilt in the wrong domain. You have certain domains in the tabernacle, in the temple, and if now, by accident even, blood is sprinkled in the wrong area, so it has to be burnt. Okay? There's certain times where it's okay, but in this case, where it's burnt, it had to be brought in a certain area of the holy of holy, of the ohel, the tent, the intersection before the holy of holies. So it wasn't. Moshe Rabbeinu Darosh, it was burnt. Why was it burnt? Was the blood sprinkled in the wrong area? They said no. So if that's the case, why was it burnt? He asked. And Darash is also the second part. So if it was burnt, the question is, why didn't you eat it? So the second Darash, Rashi says, why was it not eaten? 2 parts. Darash, going on the Korban of Rosh Chodesh. So Moshe Rabbeinu did inquire. V'nisraf, and he found out that it was burnt. Vayiktsov, and he got angered al Elazar v'al Itamar, on the 2 sons, the 2 surviving sons. Aaron had 4 sons. Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, Itamar. Nadav and Avihu just passed away on that day. Everyone's mourning over them, but they still have to do the sacrifices of the inauguration. It's a happy day for Hashem and for the Am Yisrael, okay, and for the creation. So he got angry at Elazar and Itamar, the sons of Aaron, Hanotarim, Notarim meaning that they were still alive, like Rashi says, they also were decreed to die. But because of Moshe Rabbeinu's prayers on behalf of Aaron, they were spared, the 2 sons. And Rashi learns out this rule that the davening can sometimes take care of half of a decree. Like in the case of Aaron, 2 sons survived. Lemor meaning he demanded an immediate answer. Madua lo achaltem et hachatat bimkom hakodesh. Why did you not eat the Musaf Rosh Chodesh sin offering, which is the Sirazim Chatat Lashem, like we said, on the sake of Hashem, Bimkom HaKodesh, in the place of holy, because this korban can only be eaten in the holy vicinity of the temple of the tabernacle. Ki kodesh kadashimi, because it's holy of holies. That's why it has to be eaten in holy, in the place of holy of the tent of the tabernacle. Ve'ota, and why should you eat it, even though you are mourners? Natan lachem laset et avon ha'eda. Hashem gave for you to atone for the sin of the assembly by eating of the sacrifice. Lechaper alem, to atone for them lifnei Hashem. Okay, and he goes on Hashem. It goes on Moshe Rabbeinu. Hen lo huva et dama. Hen is like they. Behold, their blood, it should be eaten. Because the only way that it should be burned is if the blood was sprinkled in the wrong place. So he says, Hen lo huva et dama el kodesh. Their blood was not sprinkled in the kodesh, which is inside the sanctuary, the holy section, which is where it's forbidden to be sprinkled. And if it is, then the sacrifice retroactively is rendered unfit and has to be burnt. So he's saying it was not sprinkled like you told me, pnima, inside the section of the whole of the interior of the tent of meeting. As achol tochlota, you should be eating it. Bakodesh kasher tziveti, like I was commanded. So they didn't answer for two reasons. Number one, it's not proper for them to answer in front of their father Aaron, who was there at the same time, and also it's not proper for them to answer in front of their rabbi. So they remained silent. So instead, by daber Aharon el Moshe, they remained silent out of honor from Aharon and Moshe, and Aharon himself answered to Moshe like this: Hen hayom hikrivu et chatatam. Hen also, they offered their sin offering ve'atolatam lifnei Hashem. Okay, and this happened to me. I lost two sons, and the same law applies if I lost other close relatives like my sister, my father, my mother. V'achalti chatat hayom. Now, if I would eat the sin offering to do the sacrifice, we know already that a kohen gadol, who's a mourner, still has to perform the sacrifices. But how about the eating? So Aaron said, but now the eating of the sacrifice, hayitav be'enei Hashem, does it make sense that I'm now mourning the loss of my two sons, and I should eat now I should eat from this sacrifice, which is a devotion of simcha? Do you think it's proper in the eyes of Hashem? Because this item was not yet taught. It was something which Hashem left for them to understand on their own. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem didn't officially tell. So the next verse reads, amazing, Vayishma Moshe, Vayitav be'einav. So Moshe Rabbeinu heard this, and it was good in his eyes. Like Rashi says there's two opinions. That Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're right, I didn't hear this halacha. I didn't know about this. It makes sense what you're saying. Now, we weren't commanded by Hashem what to do, so it makes sense what you're saying. And the Gemara, which Rashi does not quote, says that yes, Moshe Rabbeinu remembers now, but he forgot about this halacha. So Aaron had to remind him that he couldn't eat of it in his morning. Okay? So this is what the Parsha says. There's a lot of depth here. Okay? If you look back at the verse, the first verse in this aliyah, it says, and the goat offering, the goat sin offering of the Korban Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, Darosh Darash, did he inquire Moshe? In most Chumashim, there's an indicator that between these two words, Darosh, Darash, that's the exact middle point of the entire Bible. It says, Chatzi Torah betevot. This is half of the Torah in words. When it comes to words, up to the first Darosh, right after that, is half of the entire Torah from the beginning of Bereshit until this week's Parsha is half. And then Darash is from that point to the end of the Chumash, end of Dvarim, the second half of words. Okay? It's a breaking point. What is the Torah trying to say? Something very, very powerful. And number two, that this law of not eating when mourning it applies to all other sacrifices. Again, to offer the sacrifice, the Kohanim have permissions. But to eat from it in mourning, no. And where do we learn it out from? From the Korban of Rosh Chodesh. What's so special about the Korban Rosh Chodesh that now the Torah makes a whole deal of this incident? Like what's sticking out of it? Like we said earlier, the Korban Rosh Chodesh gives a chance for every Jew in the world to say, Hashem Yitbarach, I'm a sinner, I don't deserve to survive. But Hashem, who caused me to sin? The diminishing of the moon. This is a powerful statement. You know, if the tzaddikim didn't teach us this idea, we would not have the audacity to tell Hashem, you caused me to sin. You caused me to sin. How can I say that? It's because the tzaddikim, like the caliber of Rebbe Nachman, teach us that there's no such thing as despair. No matter what you've done in life, no matter how many times you've transgressed the entire Torah, you can still come back. One of the openings is this idea of the Korban Rosh Chodesh, the Seir Rosh Chodesh. It's Chatat Lashem. It's a sin offering from Hashem that He diminished the moon. On one hand, it's needed for perception. To perceive God, you need to step back. But on the other hand, I stumble and fall because of that. And where's the logic in that? Hashem, on one hand, you don't want me to sin. But look at the scenario. I'm being forced in a situation where there's no other alternative. And who's to blame? So we say on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem, it's you. Okay? So this sounds crazy, but this was the teaching of Rosh Chodesh, of the Korban Rosh Chodesh. And now that Aaron stuck out to show Moshe Rabbeinu that I can't eat of this, that me and Moshe Rabbeinu forgot the halacha, you would think, what is the Torah trying to tell us? How come Hashem made it that Moshe Rabbeinu forgot in order to leave room for other tzaddikim to open up the concept of the Korban Rosh Chodesh, which is an atonement for everybody. Anybody who just wants to come back, as soon as a person is sincere and wants to come back, the Korban Rosh Chodesh is the person's opening. Chatat Lashem, the sin offering of Hashem, because you diminished the moon, and because Hashem you diminished the moon, my sins are from there. So now, watch this. Darosh, Darash. Darosh, which means Moshe inquired, right? The gematria of Darosh, Dalet, it's written in the Torah 3 letters. Dalet, Resh, Shin. Let's take a look. Dalet is 4. Resh, 200. Shin, 300. So that's 504. And again, Darash, again, 504. What's 504? 504 is the gematria of 2 special tzaddikim, outstanding tzaddikim, aside from Moshe Rabbeinu, who made the biggest promises to help rectify the entire world. First being Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said clearly, Yecholani liftor et kol ha'olam min adin. I can alleviate, mitigate the judgment from the entire world. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was more of a judgmental tzaddik, forceful, okay? So he was someone though that he said, I can save the world from judgment. Darosh, gematria 504. Shimon ben Yochai is gematria, numerically value 501. And then add plus 3 for the words Shimon ben Yochai, 501 plus 3, 504. So the first Darosh is a hinting to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. And now, Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman's gematria, with his father's name, Nachman ben Simcha, his father's name was Simcha, is also gematria 501. And again, add 3 for the 3 words, Nachman ben Simcha, 504. Darosh, Darash, the middle of the Torah, splitting the Torah, and that's where Moshe Rabbeinu got angered. The anger also by Moshe Rabbeinu is comparable to the diminishment of the moon. Like Tzof, the Torah says that there was a ketzef, he was angry. What, Moshe Rabbeinu, you're angry, you can't say this differently? You have to have a ketzef. Why was it burnt? Like Tzof, right? In order to leave room for these 2 other tzaddikim to open up the concept and the light and the atonement of the Korban Rosh Chodesh. That's why specifically in this area, Moshe Rabbeinu had a quote-unquote heavenly sent deficiencies. Chasam, we should say that. But he was diminished in his perception that he forgot, like Rashi says, Shachachti, I forgot the halacha. And he got angry in the meantime. Why all this? To cause diminishment from Moshe Rabbeinu's perspective, being the outstanding, greatest tzaddik of ever, but to give room and leeway for 2 other tzaddikim who come to teach hope for all of Am Yisrael. And these are, like we said, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and Rabbi Nachman ben Simcha. These 2 tzaddikim stand out more than anybody else in giving hope to even the most lost souls. And this is hinted to in the middle of the Torah by the Korban Rosh Chodesh, because it's specifically the Korban Rosh Chodesh which is our opening to Hashem. Hashem, I want to be a good Jew. I want to come close to you. I'm overwhelmed by the sins and blemishes and setbacks that I'm going through due to the diminishment of the moon. Because of the diminishment of this light, I'm overwhelmed by the darkness and the confusion and the frustration of this world, the darkness of this world, which inevitably makes me fall into sin. So therefore, Hashem, this is my opening. Because you're the one, you yourself, Hashem, blessed be He, are the one who diminished the moon. You're the one who diminished the moon, and that's my opening for hope. We should be zocheh to use these tzaddikim to connect to these outstanding tzaddikim, especially now we're entering the month of Iyar, which is Rabbi Shimon's month. Shimon Bar Yochai Lag BaOmer, the 18th of Iyar. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Nachman ben Fege, Rabbi Nachman ben Simcha, along with, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, that we should activate the light of the Korban Rosh Chodesh and always remember Hashem. Tell Hashem, Hashem, I want to come close to you, but I'm pushed by the setbacks. Please let me come close to you. And to remember that that's how things, we can understand it. That to push back is part of the picture. It doesn't make sense. Like we said, that the whole idea of the Torah, Hashem created initially the two lights big and then diminished. If that's how it should be, then why the whole problem here? Why the whole balagan here? We should be zocheh to use this as our opening to come back to Hashem no matter what. Shabbat Shalom. Have an amazing week.